Hi, this is Sean Perrin, and you're listening to episode 59 of the Clarinet podcast, the show where I discuss all that's new and neat with clarinet with the neatest people in the industry. In today's episode of the podcast, I'm joined by none other than Ricardo Morales, who is the Principal Clarinetist of the Philadelphia Orchestra. Not only is Ricardo one of the most sought-after clarinetists of his generation, but he's also one of the few people in the world who has had the chance to literally design his own instrument. The collaboration between Ricardo Morales and Backun Musical Services led to the world-renowned and Canadian-made Backun MoBa clarinet line. We discuss what it was like collaborating with Morrie Backun, including why he prefers Cocobolo to Grenadilla, and the interesting reason why he, at first, asked Morrie to dye his red Cocobolo instrument black. Ricardo shares so many insightful and inspirational moments throughout this episode about music, life, practicing, and much, much more. Detailed show notes for today's episode can be found at www.clarinet.com. While you're there, I invite you to subscribe to our email list for a chance to win giveaways mentioned on the podcast. You can also check out the reviews, videos, the blog, the online store, and the new Patreon page. Patreon backers now get access to extended versions of episodes in high-quality audio, bonus content that's not otherwise found on the website, and much, much more. This week, I'd like to thank our latest Patreon backers, Gregory C. and Karen D. And now I bring you Ricardo Morales after a short message from our sponsor, D'Addario Woodwinds. Thank you so much for listening. Sanding, shaping, balancing. For centuries, mastering your instrument meant mastering these crafts too. But now, D'Addario is refining craftsmanship for the 21st century by refining their reeds and mouthpieces with the world's most innovative techniques, so you can spend less time sanding, shaping, and balancing, and more time perfecting your own craft. To learn more about the new era of craftsmanship from D'Addario Woodwinds, visit D'Addario.com/woodwinds. Welcome to the podcast, Ricardo. Just for some context for listeners, you're actually in Vancouver right now. What is that brings you to Vancouver? Are you getting your clarinets work done by Morrie, or?
I am here in Vancouver to do the final stage prep for the newest members of the Backun family, which are the Model F and the Q.
So finalizing some new instruments right now.
Yes.
What was it like working on a brand new instrument, sort of from the ground up, and any sort of story about how this relationship with Morrie blossomed into that sort of artistic culmination of a new instrument?
It so happens that Morrie and I have a common teacher, which is Ronald DeCant. Morrie started with Ronald DeCant when he was a young kid here in Vancouver. Ron DeCant was a principal clarinetist of the Vancouver Symphony for 25 years, and he taught at Arizona State University, and when he taught me, he was a professor at Cincinnati College Conservatory. Mm-hmm. So we're just a few generations separated, but Ron has a very long, distinguished career. So he knew how about my love of gadgets and how always searching for things. And he once called me and said, I have somebody that I know you're going to love because he's just as crazy as you are about this thing. So then, he gave me Morrie's number, and I called him, and it was interesting because after talking to him for 2-3 minutes, he just felt like we've been friends forever. It was just really funny. So we got along really great. And then Morrie and Joel Jaffe prepared a box of bells and barrels for me to try. I had never tried any of the other things. It was always just the usual Grenadilla stuff. And I remember when I got that box, it was really amazing because the way that you had to open it ended up looking like one of those fancy chocolate cases with all these different things. So it was like so colorful, Grenadilla and rosewood and boxwood and kingwood. It was just insanely beautiful. So I was really surprised. It's just a rainbow of color and different shapes. So it was fantastic. So, I was immediately taken by all the stuff and trying them and the different tonal possibilities, etc. And so I immediately started using some of his bells and barrels, and then as our friendship developed, he being a consummate repairman and acoustician, he was always interested in trying to hone things, and he just started asking me questions about the things that I wanted to fine tune, etc. for my instruments, and we got some different sets of bells and barrels that were working really well, and I liked them. And as people got to see me playing them, my colleagues and some of my students started trying them, and they really were becoming very popular. So then we decided to make very specific line of bells and barrels together. So that then I would try those, and so that's where the MoBa thought started coming from. And so as we kept going, he's repairing my instruments and this and that, and I'm always like, well, this is good, but why don't we try this or that? And so we started by fine-tuning some undercutting and just working on some key work and tone hole placement, and then doing more intricate work, and had to get into major surgery with the instruments and doing bore redesign and things like that. And then one day we were talking, and after we had gotten into a routine of doing this, I would get a brand new clarinet, and then I would select one that I thought I liked, and then I would just send it to Morrie to just get completely refurbished, and reboard and all that stuff. And then one day we were talking, and I was like, instead of fixing everybody else's things, why don't we just do our own thing? And then I think that it would be much more fun and much easier to start with what we would think it would be a right beginning, instead of always having to be redoing things.
So just for some context, what year was it that you tried the barrels? Do you remember? And then what year was it that you guys decided to create the new instrument? Yeah,
it was about 2002, 2003. The MoBa clarinet is a culmination of about 10 years of our working together with bells, barrels, mouthpieces, and all kinds of things. And I have to tell you, I feel extremely lucky. So I'm extremely lucky and very happy to be able to do this. I know that there's not very many people in the world who've had the opportunity to be able to work with somebody who is a master acoustician and repairman, and that also that would understand and be sympathetic to a player's needs as much as Morrie. That's one of the things that I have loved from the beginning, is that he is just as relentless as I am. He's not crazier about things. So that but it's just amazing. We are of the same thought so often. It's ridiculous that we start talking about something and it's just like we're talking in unison about the things that we would like to do in the instruments and what we're hearing and things like that. But to have the opportunity, one thing is to be able to, we can have clarinet friends and talk about and fantasize. Wouldn't it be nice if the instrument did this or did that? And to be able to be thinking, why not? And let's just do it and let's try it. And frankly, to be as successful and to work as successful as it has worked, it is just I have a T-shirt that I actually like to wear once in a while, and it just says "Living the Dream," and it really, as a clarinet player, it is really something that it is unique in the business. And so that's where we came to do the MoBa after having worked on different makers and different makes, etc., and seeing what are the things that we had liked and the things that, of course, that we wanted to avoid and to not have the same kinds of pitfalls. So then one of the things that worked the best in order to be able to make what the MoBa clarinet has been is that we got an opportunity to be sort of like it was interesting. It sounds a little extreme, but to me it was like be spiritual about the clarinet. And what about that is like, it's not, well, I'm playing my clarinet, can you just undercut this tone hole and make this a little bit brighter, and they keep going. When I started thinking about it for the things that we wanted to do, and it was, you have to be thinking about the music and separate yourself from the music. And the way I did for helping to come up with a vision of what I was hoping, it was like, how do you hear the music in your mind, and how do you hear the sound, and what are the things that that you wanted to, how is it that you want to be able to play it? How is it that you want to be able to execute something in order for it to come out? So obviously then that deals with several factors. Of course, when you're imagining a particular sound, then of course the bore design and the way that it tapers, etc., has very much to do with how the tone is shaped when one blows. And imagining how you would have a great time playing it, then you have to be thinking about where the tone hole placement and the key work, how those things end up coming into play. And I must say that from dream to reality, in life we have our dreams and then we live life, right? And I must say that the closest thing that I have in terms of what one imagines to what a reality is this clarinet. I feel extremely happy. I love how it sounds and how it feels to play. I also actually know that a lot of the great qualities of the instrument in terms of the way that it rings and the evenness of sound, etc., it does sound different than what we call a traditional clarinet. It has certain, especially the Cocobolo, has a different kind of softness to the sound, whereas then for me, I feel like I have more freedom to be expressive, and I can always put the brilliance into it as I play, as compared to playing defense, as we were to say that don't get too crazy and for it not to get too honky or whatever. So those things are great, and the last few years it has been just a great pleasure, and it has been really interesting because many of the compliments that I get from people going to concerts and from my solos, etc., is that they're like so happy. Oh, it sounds so great, but it's like I never heard a clarinet play it like that, and the sound, etc. And I know that at the end of the day, the instrument is a microphone of what one is trying to do. So it either does what you're hoping to do and enhances, or it detracts. It's hardly ever just neutral. And I have been lucky to say that at least from the reviews that I've gotten and from the reviews, and the feedback that I get from fellow clarinet players and colleagues and of other instruments, etc., it was has been really successful. Having said that, of course, it wouldn't. We would be very happy to leave it at that. That would be normal. But since we're a little bit crazy and always we have used the experience and the knowledge of making this instrument to bring a different route of instruments that are, the F model and the new Q model that we're doing, which adopt a lot of the technical advances and acoustical differences that we put in the MoBa, yet had some extra little features that are more traditional, shall we say, like the way that the poles are put into the instrument, etc. So that then it also and the shape and the weight of the instrument, so that then it has perhaps some more of the what we would call more traditional features of the clarinet sound, but it has a completely advanced new bore design and tone hole placement design, etc. So that then we can enjoy having an instrument that has all the clarinetic qualities that we like, yet the stuff that then I don't have to apologize for being more out of tune than a flute player that has a $60,000 Powell or Haynes flute,
Absolutely. So before we go on too much more, I think I'm overwhelmed with questions I now want to ask. So let's go way back to when you first did try those few barrels that you had. You opened them up and you're all excited about what was inside the case. But which one back then was your favorite? There must have been like the Fat Boy and the more traditional and.
Yes. Well, actually, the Fat Boy and the MoBa right now, those were developed later. So
at the same time. So what existed back then in 2003? I'm not familiar.
They were shaped more like the traditional barrel, the traditional barrel that we have, which is typical shape and taper of just most normal clarinet barrels. And then of course there were a couple of them that were more pear shaped and with made out of maple and things like that to compensate for the lack of density, just for the sound, etc. And some of the thicker ones were of different shapes, like the rings were thicker and bigger. We have experimented with many different things, and we went from, he always, whenever he gives me something to try, it's very funny because he crosses his arms, he sits down back, and then he's looking down from his glasses like that because I go, oh yeah, man, yeah, I love this. This is great. But so he's always waiting for the but, with a little grin. So it's sort of funny. Yeah. So the first one, I have to tell you that this, and it's super embarrassing now, but it is very typical of the way people think about clarinet and how the mentality was. Because I remember, we were just getting to meet each other. This is like within I met him just a month or whatever, and he sent me this package, and I found some stuff, and immediately the ones that I preferred, the sound and the playability, etc. I was drawn to Cocobolo right away, which is interesting. I had canewood, rosewood, two different kinds of rosewood. It was just all kinds of things, but just a standard one made out of, remember, Cocobolo with Grenadilla rings. It was pretty fancy. It was beautiful. So I started using those, and I remember the bell. It was so gorgeous, and I'm like, but hey, with this brown thing, if everybody plays black clarinets, I cannot play with this. I don't want to, So I remember calling him. I said, hey, I love this stuff, Morrie, but listen, man, would you mind dyeing my bells and barrels black? Oh. And, so it's like, I think back and it's like, you know what I mean? It's a little,
well, you were before the times a little bit, though, because that was, I remember even seeing back in 2004 or 5, I went up to not Seattle, Vancouver, and we saw the Pacific Wind Symphony playing. And I remember particularly that they all had these Backun barrels, and it was so colorful, but you never saw that anywhere back then.
Right. I would qualify myself as being adventurous, etc. But even I was a little, so I can't believe, it's like, I can't believe I asked the question. And he was so, I must tell you that he was so gracious. He was like, really? Sure, if that's what you want. We can try it. I'll die for you, no problem. And then so that's all he said, right? Which is sort of funny. And then cool. So I was peace of mind. I love this, and nobody will tell. Blah blah blah. And it's like 3 days later when I was just about to go to the post office, I was like, you know what? The hell with it. Yeah, I'm crazy. Forget it. So I go, listen, Morrie, forget it. I'm just crazy. Never mind. It's just nuts. It's just nuts. So it was. But what I have to say about that is that, it is normal for players to, see something that is, off of the beaten, already walked path, and, and to be a little apprehensive. But, what I would suggest to people is, yes, give yourself the opportunity. You don't even have to think of courage. Give yourself the opportunity to be adventurous and to check and to apply to the daily vocabulary. What if? Yeah. What if? So that way we keep a more panoramic view of how to play music, what kind of instrument we can use, how to play, etc.
Well, it's very funny you say that because I feel like a lot of people pick Cocobolo, well, not just Cocobolo, but various things because they look different and they do want to separate themselves from it. So what was it about the feel of the Cocobolo and the sound that you preferred if it wasn't the look itself?
Yeah, well, for me, what I found was that it just had a softness to the texture of the sound. Mm-hmm. I found that it gave me what I would call a halo in the sound. There's, in Grenadilla, I really like it. The upper partials of the sound are very defined in a way that I would call a nice ring, like a ding, Yeah. But we had that, but just a little bit of a velvet blanket around it. So it's like a ding, ding, it's a halo to the sound. So whenever I would play something that I just wanted just a special sound, I really like that. And also what I found was that with the response was quicker, and not just in terms of actual speed, but like the amount of sound that I'm getting when I play pianissimo or something like that, you can feel like it responds better, and therefore it invites you to be able to play softer, and therefore you get more courageous about playing more colors in the sound, and not be I have to play da just to be safe, because otherwise the response is a little difficult. So this way it sort of encourages, gives you permission to be more musically minded instead of just playing in a safe way.
And what would you say your favorite innovation on the MoBa clarinet is?
Well, without a doubt, I mean, like the F bend, each actually every single tone hole placement. I mean, if you try any traditional instrument out there, when you grab a MoBa, you'll find there's a particular kind of different feel, and after you give yourself the chance, it's actually more comfortable. But at the beginning, it feels different because every single tone hole placement is different in order to achieve the scale, etc. So, of course, the scale is great, but one of the things that I love is having the automatic bend key, because it's not just that then you get a much better 12. I mean, yes, that you get a better 12, but you get a note that basically is a non-note in most instruments. And but the treatment that we do, especially in the MoBa, it just it allows you to get a particular kind of response and stability for the rest of the right hand, which is my favorite feature of the instrument.
So for those who don't know, would you describe exactly what the low F vent does if they're not familiar with that on an instrument?
So the automatic low F vent is a vent that is actually open at all times, whereas when there is a spatula and the key for the low E, so that then whenever you're playing the low register, it is open and it helps for the venting and to make it easier for the resistance and the resonance. And then when for the low E has a spatula, which a little arm that closes it without you having to do anything, and then it closes when one plays in the upper register. It has a lever just in the regular 12th lever. It just engages it, so then it closes the minute that you engage the 12th key. So when you go on the upper register, then you don't have to deal with that vent being open, and therefore you don't have to do any adjusting, new fingering, no stretching your pinky, or having to do the German style thumb E or anything like that. This one, what I love is that it's there for you, and then you don't have to do anything about it. It's sort of like having anti-lock brakes.
Does that key, though, add a lot of weight to the instrument? Because it runs down the whole length of the tube, really, doesn't it? From the
actually, the thing is that the key work that has been done in such a way with and the type of spring action that it has, it is quite smooth, so that then the you can do it, and when it's if you have it perfectly adjusted, there's no. I don't even feel it. I have tried many instruments without the key, and when I play mine with the key, I don't find any adjustment. Of course, if one were to try one that is maladjusted, then of course you will feel it. But that goes for any key.
Yeah, sure. I didn't mean weight in the key press. I meant weight on the instrument, on your arms.
Yeah. That doesn't really. No. That doesn't really add much. I am actually just trying the weight on just a traditional instrument, and the other. I would say it's less than 2 ounces. So for sure, it's not something that would really just predetermine your uses. Actually, one of the things that I do use, and I recommend for all clarinet players, I actually use a neck strap all the time. Actually,
which type of neck strap?
Yeah, with the elastic band rest neck strap, so that way it takes away some of the weight, but you still have the flexibility to put the clarinet in the most precise.
Is there a particular brand, though? I'm sure people will want to go looking.
Yeah, I've been using the BG neck straps and BG ligatures and BG neck straps for 20 years now. So they're just great. Actually, I mainly started using it because in the Metropolitan Opera you're playing for many, many hours, and of course, at the fifth hour of Parsifal, you don't get extra points for being a hero, and then just keeping on your hands for 5 hours. So it's like, so I actually, and actually when I was there, I had developed tendonitis, and through therapy and workouts, etc., and of course using the neck strap, and then I got cured. So
that's very interesting, actually, and I didn't expect the conversation to go this way, but I recently injured my hand really badly, and so is there any advice you'd give to people who are trying to recover from that sort of injury? Is it just patience, or?
There's three things. So the first thing I would say, immediately neck strap right away. And some people say, "Oh, I use it for practice and that's it." I would say use it all the time. Number two is more rest intervals in your practice session. Okay. And then the third one, which is very important, is you need to strengthen your arms and the thing that the body is, everything is interconnected. So everything that we're using for playing is connected. So that means that if you're having like hand problems, like tendonitis, etc., what happens is that usually it is that we're holding the instrument, and then when the muscles get fatigued and we keep going, then the muscles are not moving as well. So then the tendons start to do some of the work that is supposed to be delegated to the muscles, and therefore they work a little extra hard. And when they're working extra hard, they get inflamed, and therefore you get your tendonitis. And if they get super inflamed in your tunnel, then that's where you get your carpal tunnel. So the way that I got better with my hand issues was that I actually started working out, and I started doing weight training. And I remember that, it is really interesting because, you might not be able to believe it, but when I first started working out, I remember that I had a hard time, bench pressing like 45 pounds. So I started, and, I'm not a professional, and I'm not Mr. Olympia or anything, but I got to the strongest that I did, building up over a year and a half. Then I got to the most I did was like 220. I was doing much better, and then I got lazy again and whatever. But that my base is much higher now. Like whenever I show up to the gym, I can work it up to like a 150, 175, which is not as much as before, but it's not 40 pounds. Okay, yeah. So the overall strength of my muscles is higher, and that might seem, if for some of our members that are listening that may be injured, of course, you're kind of be going and doing something that's severe right away. But it's little by little. You can just start with cans of beans, whatever.
Yeah.
Just with that, and actually, it is not just for the hands, but you have to strengthen everything. It's connected: the forearms, the biceps, the shoulders, the back, and then the chest, and everything. Once you have everything much more comfortably developed, then the instrument will obviously feel lighter.
In my case, it was sort of a direct injury to the tendons through a laceration, so it's a little different than most, I suppose. But as far as like the physical strength training and stuff like that, do you feel that helped your playing in some way, or your breath support, or
Absolutely.
Did you go into that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so of course everything. Everything that we do in order to improve our strength and stamina definitely can be put into work. I mean, I had friends and students in the past who actually ran marathons and they were still running out of breath. So it's not just there's a technique, different technique for just running, 5,000 meter or whatever, or how to blow through the instrument. But obviously, if you have the lung capacity, is a different technique, but you can channel that. But if you have the capacity, then obviously it's a matter of being able to apply it. But I would say yes, that a little bit of strength training and flexibility is important.
Absolutely. So let's actually change gears again. This has been very interesting for me personally, but let's go back and talk a little more about the MoBa clarinet before we move on. You mentioned that it sort of had a spiritual element to it, and that you thought that designing the clarinet sort of was a pinnacle of your career. Would you view that almost as sort of at par with your playing achievements in its own way, or different, or how do you think about that?
I would say it's similar. It's very similar, and it's sort of like life. The thing is that what I would say is that there's a phrase that music is life, and it sounds spiritual, it sounds interesting, but I actually find it to be quite literal. Meaning, the way that one expresses through music and the pacing on the music and the speed of words is just like the speed of notes. You have to take the time to make it a little clearer for people to be able to understand. And with the instruments, I think that this instrument is phenomenal, and we are very happy. And the thing that I'm happiest still is that the work is never finished, and we are always looking for ways to make it more refined and to be more efficient, etc. So while I would say that this is really, it could be a pinnacle, what I say is that we are always reaching for the stars, and in music and in life, I believe, you have to try to reach for the stars. And in your journey up there, if you fall down from your search for the stars, you're trying to search the moon, and you fall down and you land on Mount Everest. All right,
But
if you're looking at Mount Everest as the pinnacle, then you'll never get there, or you get there and then there's so much more.
Yeah, you're still looking at the stars.
Yes. So that is one of the things that I really appreciate about the way that the philosophy here at Backun MoBa, which is, yes, do we have amazing products and in most ways superior to everything else out there? Yes, but so what? We are not ever resting on our laurels and just leaving it at that. Even the most humble, the beginning clarinet, etc., we give it the same kind of attention. And I come and I try the instruments, and some of our great players that love our products also test the instruments out, so that then it's not based just on a price scheme, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Like like the work that I presented this yesterday and today, and we're gonna do some more. It is no different for our models than what we did and how we do to develop for the MoBa, and that is one of the things that I feel happiest about.
So let's talk a little bit about, we've kind of started briefly talking about your playing a little bit, but let's talk about your incredible orchestral career. Arguably, you are one of the most accomplished living orchestral clarinetists. What advice do you have for people who are just starting this path or yearning to get there one day into a large orchestra?
Well, I find that most of the time, the most important thing that one needs in order to be able to have the opportunity to be successful at auditions, etc., is to have good basics. Okay, and what I mean by good basics, you have to have a good standard or sound that it is appreciated in the area that you're in. If, for example, in the sound that is preferred in England is different than what we use in North America as compared to in France, etc. So you have to be aware of those things. And
sorry to interrupt, but should one decide beforehand where they want to play before they start focusing on these basics, or should they be open to changing their sound if need be?
Well, I think that people, yes, you can have a general idea of where it is. I mean, I'm not saying that I want to be in the Boston Symphony, therefore I can only sound like how they play in Boston. I would say, that there's a general way that people how people describe the sound that is mostly preferred in North America versus Germany, etc. And therefore, you have to, if that's where you are and that's what you want to accomplish, then you can start with that. I mean, but the sound, of course, the sound is one element. The way that one supports the sound and can get through the instrument, be able to play scales, and the control for in the registers and articulation are paramount. I mean, you have to have all those things because nobody, doesn't matter how beautiful your sound is, if you're going to play the Mendelssohn Scherzo, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to get a gig. You know what I mean? So there's a certain basic level of so you need a little bit of that. So that's the first thing. Then the patience. You need the patience to go through the work and in order to be able to prepare for auditions. Most of the time that we practice things sort of haphazardly and not as calm as we should. And I must admit, I'm the first one to do that. So I had to make a plan of action for when one is deciding to prepare for such an event, and how to, there are many different people who have different techniques about doing it. I prefer to go from just a huge amount of repetitions in the slow tempo and build it up, but successful repetitions, not. It sounds a little crazy, but I like to do, for example, in a piece that I may be doing, if I take a tempo that might be like, I would say 15 notches under the tempo. If if it goes at 130 or whatever, I'll start at easily at 60,
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just go 60 or 50 and build it up every four numbers, things like that. But making sure that I would do like what I call the 10 repetitions, and make sure I can do it 10 times in a row without mistake. Because then what that does is that then you get to a place where you're practicing with purpose, even in the relaxed setting that you're in, and therefore, even if you're doing it slowly, that means that there's a level of concentration that you always have to have when you're practicing. So that means that by the time that you're at number 6 or number 7, it's like you're playing for real, right? So you don't want to screw up and go back to the beginning. So it helps you, even in the slow tempo, to have the concentration to finish those 10. And then if you're moving, so, by the time that if I am 15 notches below tempo and I do those, that is without having made any mistakes, okay? I would have done it by the time I get to the tempo at least 150 times correctly. Okay, and if I screwed up in one of the notches, number 4, number 6, and then start again, you keep the good ones in the bank, right? And then you have to concentrate and then continue. So that means is that you will have done it a certain number of times. It sounds, and of course you cannot do it in one day because you'll commit suicide. It's just go crazy. So you have to plan it. So then if you're 15 notches below, then you do, I would say between 3 and 5 at the most per day for any particular excerpt, and then you move on. So then you can get to your prescribed tempo, hopefully in the span of 10 days or something like that.
Sorry, do you mean 3 to 5 tempo markings per day? Is that what you're saying? So going from 60 to 65, is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, if I'm doing it every 60, 63, 66, something like that. I just did 3, but then I did 30 right. 30 correct ones for that day.
So you'll do 30 in a row?
Well, I do it in groups of 10, of course. If I'm concentrating, I do 30 in a row, and if I don't screw up. But, since I'm human like everybody else, and I lose concentration, and I'm always checking out, the phone is, even if it's in vibrate, and then you screw up something. Then, but you do at least 3. I like to do at least 3 rounds, okay? So it would be at least 30 times, okay, I'm not saying like Daphnis and Chloe from the first page to the end 30 times. I mean, you have to concentrate on, you will do the one page that gives you trouble, the 30 times, or the 5 measures or 6 measures that you want to concentrate on, and then you move on, things like that. So you have to use surgical precision and surgical strike to do one thing at a time.
So this might seem like a silly question, but how do you keep track of which one you're on? Because it would occupy my mental cycles a little bit to remember, okay, this is number 27.
No, because I don't go 27. It's up to 10. I count 10.
Oh, so you just do one group of 10, second group of 10, third group of 10. And then if you can do them all right, you move on?
Yeah, then you move to something else. So you don't burn your brain, and you don't. Also, you don't injure yourself from extreme continuous repetition of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. That's actually really interesting. Is that something you apply to all of your practice?
Yes. Yeah.
So be it scales, etudes, pieces, excerpts?
Yes. It's I try to take, with all my super talented students, I tell them, you have to take ability and talent out of the equation. Mm-hmm. Okay? And you put in the work, and you do the work, And talent and music, your talent will give you the powdered sugar for the extra beauty for the expression. But don't you have to put in the work. It's like there's a saying from Cal Opperman that I used to say, and I love it, and I keep it in my front of my mind. He said, "Practice and hope, but don't hope more than you practice."
Absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely.
So with that one, it's just like just like that. And you have to keep a positive attitude. I mean, like the thing is that we're always growing in music as in life. It's like you're either getting better or worse. Nothing really stays. I mean, like if we could just they keep life in a particular and just freeze dry it and preserve everything like that we're wanting. Hey, I finally lost those 20 pounds. I want to stay here forever. And then the body changes. Our needs change. So everything moves. So you have to be always, conscious of the work you're doing and flexible enough to make the adjustments necessary for what needs to be done.
Absolutely. And so speaking of sort of technique and different methods of learning music, do you have any methods for memorizing music better or in a way that works for you, or how does that work for you?
For me, actually, it's I don't have a particular method for memorizing. There are people who are good at that. I remember when I memorized the Nielsen for the first time. It's just a piece that is not, it doesn't want to stick in your brain, etc. But so then what I did was I forced myself to learn it, like one page at a time, just 2 lines at a time. Let me play these 2 lines. Let me play them 20 times and then start playing it without looking at the music. Oh, I made the mistake. Go back. What is it? Okay, look at it that way. And it was just a very crass, brute amount of hours that I put into it. I'm sure there are people who have good, maybe a good technique for memorizing. I get to memorize things just because I put in the work. Like I was saying, like for example, you're playing that Mendelssohn scherzo and you're 15 notches below. I'm sure that by the time that you get, and that's one time that you get to the tempo, and of course, once you get to your tempo, that's fine. You get it, and then you start again back slow. Mm-hmm. And then you do it. So, I like to, before an audition, I like to be able to do the plan. If it's nice if you can do it 3 times, at least 3 times. So then if you're 15 notches below each time, then, you will have done 450 times that Mendelssohn scherzo. Wow. You see what I mean? So the thing is that that's, to me, that is what builds confidence. It's not as much as used to be, as much as religiosity in my count and concentration and Zen mind and all that stuff. I think that what will give you the confidence is just the knowledge that you have, that you are accomplishing it. Because, if you're not cheating in the practice of doing it and you are actually doing the 10 times in a row, and then when you're doing it from let's say you're doing Mendelssohn scherzo, that the typical tempo would be 84 or 86, and you start religiously, you're going to start at 50, and there you're moving every 4 numbers. The thing is that you will gain that confidence, and there's so much to be done, like I like to think you have to have your little checklist of things. Okay, even at the slow tempo, do you have the right sound? Is it the right articulation? Are you using the right fingering? Are you using the right blowing? Are you having an embouchure that's not leaking air? Do you have that efficiency? Do you have the character for the style and the phrasing? And so if you have those 8 things and you can honestly check mark all of those while you're doing those 10, there's no way you'll be bored. You'll be like so happy because you'll be sounding so great no matter what tempo. So I find that there's no real reason ever to feel bored when you're practicing. If you're feeling bored, then you might as well stop and do something else, because that means that you're actually not doing it right.
So you're giving us such interesting insight into your sort of methods here, and I want to thank you for that. I also feel, though, that I'm only going to get full value of it when I listen back a couple times through this and sort of take it in again. But you seem like you have such a methodological approach. Does that come from within, or was there a teacher who inspired you to be that way, or where does it come from?
I feel very lucky that I've had great teachers, you know, and great people that I have have come to my life. Many friends. My three teachers. My first clarinet teacher, Leslie Lopez in Puerto Rico, who is the most famous of the clarinet and woodwind teachers over there. It's just most of the accomplished clarinet players from Puerto Rico started with him. He's amazing. And then Ron DeCant in Cincinnati, and Edward Palanker from the Baltimore Symphony, that I started with him for 6 years at Eastern Music Festival, and Ron DeCant, did I mention, and of course Anton Weinberg, my teacher from that was a visiting professor in Indiana, and before that he was in the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, and just famous teacher in London. And so they all were so different, and they were all so right in giving me so many different points of view. So then the important thing is just to keep an open mind to see what are the things that one can get from those. From all those people. Plus, many of my colleagues in the Met and in Philadelphia and, in music festivals that I've done. The thing is that I feel very lucky to be able to have been able to play with many, many accomplished players and actually good friends, even at school, that had very many good ideas. And what I would suggest to people is that you have to, the minute you get somebody saying this is the only way or this is the way and the rest forget it, then that for sure is they're just giving you a dead end for music and for life, okay? Because there's no such thing as that, And I would say it's like, the more you learn, then of course it is good to learn different things. And even if you disagree with them, if they're different than what you prefer, it only strengthens your core values. But if we are into a business of just plainly rejecting things just because they are different from what my first teacher said or from his teacher's teacher said or whatever, then we would never progress. If we were thinking always like that, the clarinet would still have the two keys, from the Shalom.
Absolutely.
Okay, and there's this I forgot the author. There's this one of the million books written about the clarinet, but it's one of those. It was quoting some clarinet player. The clarinet's hard enough with 7 keys. Now they want to put 13 keys. Oh my God! It's just making things so hard. And of course, we can laugh about it right now. But, we have people who think that way too. Hey, the clarinet doesn't need a bend, doesn't need this or that, and there's always people who are comfortable with just, with the status quo. And I understand you have to be able to feel comfortable with what you're doing. But, I'm sure that many people, many great artists were never like that. Could you imagine? I mean, like we talk about how great we want to be musicians and artists and blah, blah, blah. And many times some schools just churn out people that is just like a little factory, Yeah. And the thing is, when you're thinking about this thing, it's like, okay, like Mozart concerto, everybody has a defined way. Oh, it has to be this way. It has to be that way. And, Mozart died at age 36, and he was, even at that time, he was young. He was not, the average age, okay, was maybe like in their 50s or early 60s, but without penicillin, I don't even know how the world went around. Oh my God. But the thing is that the point is that, when you see the amount of input that he put in his music, and that had he lived 10 more years instead of to 36 to 46, and Beethoven would have been around, etc. The kind of musical interaction that would have happened and everything, for a fact that he would not have been satisfied writing the same way, the same music, or anything like that, because even 5 years prior to his death, there, even though it's still in the so-called classical period, you see how much more sophisticated his music is, etc., and all these great composers, etc. So the thing is that we have to, in a way, be like that if we are to, we have to adapt to what's next.
Well, it seems to me that most composers wrote their most compelling stuff in their later years, so it would have been surprising if Mozart hadn't continued to adapt and evolve and change,
So the question is, why don't we?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. So
So this is something I was going to ask earlier about. So your thoughts on the E flat key, for example, on the clarinet? Do they expand the repertoire, or does it get in the way? Or of course,
the E flat key.
Yeah.
Oh, I use it quite often. You know, the thing is that it's just like everything. I mean, it's like there's a way to, you know, you have to use it. There's places like Debussy Rhapsody, we've gotten used to, you know, sliding around with that.
Yeah, that last page. That part, is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about like in the second page when we're playing in B major.
Oh yes, yeah, that spot too.
You know, things like that. Of course, you know, where we learned by sliding around, etc., and it can be done, it's fine. But once you actually start using the key and you practice it, so you can use it, then you have many more possibilities. You don't have to use it, but if it's there and you use it, then that is, you know, is much better for you. It's sort of like the turn signal. You know, you don't really have to use it, but you know, it's much better for you if you use your turn signal, right? So it is sort of like that. I mean, of course, at the beginning, the trick is that you have to put it has to be positioned in a place that is comfortable for you. Yeah. For the player, therefore, you know, different makes have different key lengths or whatever. So you have to sometimes you have to bend it to be in a place where you are. I personally end up making an adjustment because when I started, which I was 11, my hands were way smaller, so I have gotten used to extending my pinky. So like in the normal place, I very easy overreach and hit it. So you know, I customize my sizing and the positioning. So. If we give ourselves the opportunity to do that, and then you just have to hit Berman returning scales for E major and A flat major, you know, and go to town on those, then you get used to using it, and therefore you have more flexibility. I just wanted the instrument to be a better tool. I mean, the clarinet, as much as we love the sound of it, you know, it is a tool for the expression. You know, as we all know, people play the clarinet differently than 50 years ago, than 50 years before that. And, you know, differently than when Brahms heard it, and different from when Beethoven, Beethoven may not have heard that much. But, you know, from Mendelssohn and Mozart, it's a different sound, a different everything. I mean, that's a terrible joke, but, you know.
Yeah, I'm still laughing at it here, sorry.
Yeah, terrible. But you know what I mean? So it is, how do we make a better tool for accomplishing the things that the musicians, the great composers ask of us?
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on this stupid E flat key, but it's so funny that you say this, because one of the go-to arguments I have, because I strongly agree that it has value and that it has a purpose, but I've heard people who think that it's literally sort of evil and that you should not practice it at all lest you use it. Yeah. And you know, one of the things I always say, though, to the people who say to me that, oh, well, what if I hit it by mistake? You know, couldn't that logic have been applied to every single key on the clarinet at some point?
Absolutely. But, you know, something as simple as that kind of question, it's like, you know what? That means that person needs an adjustment, a customizing. Look, you know, it is just like everything. If I give you the best tennis shoes, the most comfortable tennis shoes in the world, you can run from here to Winnipeg in 3 hours, you know, from Vancouver, and you could just run and be like this $1 million man or whatever. But I give you a size 15, then it's not going to be so useful as, you know, if you need a size 10 and a half or whatever. Yeah. So, you know, something like that is just as simple as just having to get your local repairman to put it in a place where you know that, I mean, I cut it short enough so that I know I have to extend to it. So when I'm playing normal stuff, I know that I won't hit it accidentally, or as much. So that's one of the things. So that's just a matter of putting it in the place that you need.
See, I find it so awesome that you're talking about the customization of the clarinet, because this is even literally the clarinet that you have sort of co-invented with Morrie, and yet you're still refining it to your own personal taste, and you're sort of advising people to do that with it, which I think is so So
Yes,
interesting.
I mean, like the thing is that what I like about the instrument is that it does have its own particular voice and its own sound, etc. But I find it much more like I see so many of our artists that you see David Schifrin and Corrado Giuffredi and Eugene Mundy and Jessica Phillips and so many people who play these instruments, and they all sound so different. I mean, we all sound different, and that is what I prefer. I want the instrument to just be a microphone for your voice, so then you can, so then it can allow you to find your voice easiest, and that's how come many times I move around. I usually my go-to is in Cocobolo, the clarinet, but I love having my Grenadilla set, and I use it from time to time. I really like it very much, and then sometimes I put Grenadilla bells and barrels on the Cocobolo clarinet, or vice versa. I put Cocobolo bells or a barrel on the Grenadilla, but it's for a different feel, a different color. And the thing is that I want people to feel free to find their voice. I mean, the last thing that I want is just to have to make an instrument that just sounds like, oh yeah, they're playing this or that, and based on just the tonal qualities. I mean, it's nice to have, but I want the most important thing is to have an instrument to allow you to sound your best version of yourself.
Oh, I love that. So there's actually just two more quick listener questions here. One of them is, and I'm not sure if this is true, but are you playing double lip embouchure all the time, or do you go back and forth, or what are your thoughts on that? And
okay. So on double lip, I've said it many times before. I would say that I have not heard one person who does not sound better on double lip than on single lip. Meaning that everybody I know, everybody can sound better on double lip, and there's certain physical reasons for that. When you put the double lip, the first thing that happens is that if you check your tongue position when you're playing single lip, and then when you curl your upper lip and put it over your teeth, there's a physical reaction that makes the tongue go into a slightly different place, and it sort of curls itself inside. And that kind of movement is virtually the exact place where one needs it for having at least for the French style high tone position. Mm-hmm. And it just happens naturally because there's that physical reaction, how we do that. Then, of course, you have the bigger oral cavity that works as a nicer resonance box. And then you have, it's much harder to bite, so you cannot bite into the instrument. And also, it helps you to balance how you use your fingers. So for all those reasons, I practice quite often double lip. I encourage my students to practice double lip, and some of them just started practicing that way and ended up staying playing on double lip because it does smooth out the sound very very much. And a lot of the players that I love who's playing, they play double lip, starting from, from David Weber to Carusa to Manuel Gomez, those old school guys, to Stolzman played double lip, and Eugene Mundy, and many. So there's a Harold Wright, and so there's many players. Also, of course, Ralph McLean. So there's a lot of people that do play double lip, and Corrado Giuffredi, of course. Yep. That sound is just phenomenal. I use it once in a while, and I must admit to our audience members, and please forgive me, the only reason why I don't use it all the time is because I'm lazy. That's the only reason why I don't. So I was just going to ask, because you said that you practice with it a lot, but you don't actually perform with it. So, or sometimes you do and sometimes you don't? Yes, I do perform. Well, when I perform, I will play just a page of a piece or whatever, like a nice little solo or whatever, and then just keep going with the other stuff. But it's just it's only because I'm inconsistent with the practicing of it, even though, I'm inconsistent because I don't do it every day for like the 5-10 minutes every day. So it's just like one of the things. So, it's funny because I'm glad we're not on video anymore. I'm sitting here making these faces, trying to play with my embouchure a bit here, trying to feel what you were talking about. Yeah. What you should do is close your eyes and then do the feel. Put your index finger on your lower lip and put your teeth on your nail, and then and then from there just put your curl your upper lip and put it and see what happens with your tongue. Huh. Yeah, I've tried it before. I find it's difficult for me to hold the clarinet stably with it, but I guess if you have a neck strap on, that probably is half the battle. Plus, the other thing is that it's a matter of getting used to it. Yes, of course, it's not going to be, I assume you've been playing clarinet for longer than 10 years. So, imagine the upper lip is not used to holding, you have 10 years of that, the muscles not being used in the same way as your lower. You see, and oboe players and bassoon players play standing up and do this everything in double lip anyway. So there's no reason why that they wouldn't be able to do it. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things that of course, at the beginning, it feels more unstable. But as we strengthen the upper lip and the upper facial muscles, then you get much more stable. When you see people from the past, they play double lip, they play standing, etc., not a problem. So.
Well, yeah, you raise a good point. I mean, you can't expect to just start something new and be where you are with your current technique of 20, 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. But, the important thing is that it keeps an open mind. First of all, as for remedial work, immediately it's just great things because it helps you to reshape your embouchure. It helps you to redistribute the weight and the pressure that one uses on the embouchure, which it's just I even hate the word pressure it just helps you to have the snugness of the embouchure. It helps with the tone position, and it helps you to become that instability is good while we're practicing slowly to see which fingers we overuse to overcompensate, we hit too hard, etc. So it helps us to find which of those fingers it is like that, so that then we can practice a more smoother technique.
Absolutely. I'm going to try incorporating this. It seems really interesting to me. I've always kind of wanted to give it that push, but, hearing all these great players and yourself included who use it, I'm really questioning myself now.
No, it's just one of those things. I mean, it's one of those things. Hey, look, kale salads and this and that and water is better than beer, is better than Coca-Cola, but how come McDonald's still makes billions of dollars a year? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you got to say no to the kale salad and just have some, big bowl of fries.
Yes, of course. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So there's one more listener question, and that is, and again, I'm not entirely positive that this is a consistent thing that you do, but he's asking about the process on which you decided to play crystal mouthpieces and synthetic reeds. Are you still pretty much doing that? Or maybe I'll just let you talk about that a little bit.
Yes. Well, with the crystal mouthpieces, actually, it's very interesting. I used crystal mouthpieces when I was a teenager, and I still had that particular one. It was a gift from very nice friends, and I, like all the competitions that I did earlier in my career, I used with that mouthpiece. And when I started studying with Ron DeCan, he was like, no, let's just get you something else, blah blah blah. And Ron, he studied. I forget with whom he studied in Lancaster, where he's from, but he's very good, old school. His only main teacher in college was Bonad. So he went from Lancaster to New York. He did his bachelor's and he started his diploma at Juilliard with Bonad, and then that was it. And then he went out. So then he told me, let's just go get you something else. And then he was always teasing me about, well, when you get your first job, I'll give you my mouthpiece, which was, of course, one of these vintage things. And what's funny about it is that I got lucky. I got a job in my freshman year, at the end of my freshman year. And he's like, I think that what you're using is fine. You keep what you're using. So he owes me a mouthpiece when I so it's one of those funny things. So but anyway, so I, of course, I switched it, and then I just went on using on different things or whatever. But the thing is that I always liked the sound, and Corrado always for a long time he used hard rubber, like all of us, but there's a particular quality to the sound that I've always liked. And once he started using them again, I thought the mouthpiece that I had was made by the Pomaricos. They have been in the business doing that stuff for the last 50, 60 years. I mean, and like all the mouthpieces that were sold by Selmer, by by Van Doren, the L1, L2, all those things were actually made by Pomarico. So they have a huge, vast amount of knowledge and all the stuff. So when I was teaching at I was very lucky to be invited to be a visiting professor for the conservatory in Milan, the Milan Conservatory. And since they are very nearby, I went there and I met with them, and I just tried one that I fell in love with, and that was that. So I've been trying them, and so the things are. The advances that people talk about, it's like, of course, when you compare that to hard rock, because it's so much harder, then it virtually doesn't change that much. I don't say that nothing changes. Everybody says it doesn't change at all. And I will agree, but I would say it probably doesn't change that much, but nothing really stays in the world. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. But so that was that. And in terms of the synthetic reeds, just exactly like in my thought of trying different things, and working with more, etc. There was a time when I was playing some concerts and I had a breakthrough. It's a very, very small, fine
big difference. Yeah.
Well, no, it's a fine line between breakdown and breakthrough. They're closer than you think. So I was playing some concerts and it's like, just the reeds. It's in January in Philadelphia. The East Coast is notoriously weird for reeds and all that stuff. So, so I just, I went. After I had some concerts that I was just really upset about. I was just having like four of my different model mouthpieces, just setting them out with different reeds. So I was doing like a crazy match the mouthpiece to the reed, which is insane, but I was just desperate that week. And then I started playing this concert, and I'm like, this feels a little weird. What is it? And then I look, that was not the right reed for that mouthpiece. So I was like so upset. And in the middle of it, it's like, this is so stupid. I felt like so unprofessional because of that. So I just decided to try the ones that I had in my drawer. Everybody always tries to it's good for practice, but nobody takes them seriously. So but since I was so fed up, I just tried them, and then I went the next week of concert with the orchestra. I played it, and I actually asked some of my colleagues, hey, what do you think about the sound, blah, blah, blah. And I did back-to-backs with some of my distinguished colleagues from the orchestra, which are very much, Philadelphia people and the Philadelphia traditions and all these kind of hardcore things. And they could not really even tell the difference. So then since they were hard-pressed to tell the difference, then I decided, you know what? That's it. So I'm just going to try them. And of course, it takes a little commitment because they are similar, but they're not exactly the same. But that was that. I mean, I threw all my cane reeds that week, and then, I never looked back. I did it that way so that then I could get more used to them quicker, because, going back and forth, like some people do, is, I call it, it's like, trying to start a new relationship while the old girlfriend keeps coming back. It's like, there's certain you want to learn to relearn how to feel what it feels like, and therefore to shape the sound, etc. So that's why I did it. And then I've been lucky to with Morrie, we made since we're always trying to keep innovating. We did a couple of the adjusted a couple of our model mouthpieces that work not only with cane, but that we did some work so that then it works really, really wonderfully with synthetics. That's the MoBa C and the L model. They work really great for that. And then so with the crystal was the next step. Right? Let's just try this out, and then a different color, different feel. But again, it's another tool in the toolbox for helping people to feel more comfortable and have more options.
Do you think you have to go cold turkey on the cane reeds to switch to plastics? Because I've always been in the camp that you can kind of dabble with both, but maybe that's not a good thought either.
You can dabble in both, but the thing is, what I'm talking about is that the real idiosyncrasies. For example, for me personally, I thought that I had a correct embouchure, etc. But you know what? The thing is, and it was pretty good. But the thing is that synthetic, for example, the lasers that I use, they do not like to be clamped down. Okay?
No, yeah.
So and I thought I didn't bite, and I actually didn't bite that much, but enough that then you have to get used to being able to. I had to relearn. I had to adjust to not adjusting. So it's like how to keep the embouchure more normal. For example, like in cane, because the cane swells up, then you have to loosen up the embouchure as you play during the concert, because then it's swelling up, and then if you want to play in the low register, and you have to get the cane to vibrate more. There's a little adjustment that we tend to relax a little bit, and you don't have to do those things in synthetic, because then it's not it's actually detrimental. So you can have a more stable embouchure, the same embouchure for fortissimo as for pianissimo, but it takes time to relearn those little things. And for just an everyday, I'm just having a rehearsal or whatever, or the winter season is bad, let me just put this, I work better. Okay, that is fine. But if you want to really feel like you own it, you just need to spend some time with it, to get all the full benefits of it. I mean, you can go back and forth and have a couple in the case just for emergencies or whatever. But I think that eventually you can get a more consistent, better sound, because with cane, the good thing is like buying a lottery ticket. You're always hoping that you're gonna win the lotto. But my experience has been that I always got the perfect read the day before or the day after the big event. But most of the time, in the day of the event, it's like it rained, it got a little stuffy, or it got cold, it's a little brittle, whatever. And with this stuff, it's just with the synthetic, I have a much more consistent batting average, and therefore I have more confidence in the way I play, and it's much easier to be able to. Like, for example, when I'm testing when I'm testing the instruments, I don't want to come to Vancouver to try something and then it was rain. Yesterday was pouring rain over here, and today is the most beautiful day. It has been super beautiful, and tomorrow's gonna rain again. But there's kind of stuff while you're trying to determine intonation and response for an instrument and things like that. That's the kind of stuff where it's a little tricky, and you don't want to make it haphazardly.
Well, I think it was Ed Jaffe again who told me a story about some artist that was actually, or maybe it was Tim Elvey from Leger when I talked to him. I can't remember who it was right now. But he told me a story of where these artists that are performing in a lot of cities will actually keep stashes of reeds in each city.
Yes.
So they can be climatized, and that's, kind of taking things to the extreme. But
Right.
Yeah, no, I have to say, I love your open-minded attitude towards all these things, and I'm feeling a strange sort of sense of Canadian pride right now hearing you talking about the Backun and the Leger. And
it's all the best stuff made in Canada, man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to get you some maple syrup, too.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Out of the interest of time, I feel like we could talk all evening, but I want to respect the fact that you, of course, have many other things to do right now.
Well, thank you. And, I just want to invite people to keep an open mind and find, do the things they love in the clarinet. That's all.
If someone does want to sort of reach out to you or online, is that something you're open to through Artist Works?
Yes, through Artist Works, they can throw messages or a shout out over there, and of course they can always send questions to Joel Jaffe at Backun Musical, and he is always very good about helping me organize and answer questions that you may have.
Absolutely.
Anybody may have. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Ricardo, for taking the time to chat with me, and hopefully we can have you back on the show one day again.
Oh, thank you. Oh, one little last shout out. Just so you know, in the Backun Musical website, there's a book of clarinet fingerings, resonance fingers, 3 books, book in 3 volumes, the third notes and altissimo register and the high register that I worked on, and it's very concise with suggestions and extra pieces that the fingers work out, and it's a free download, etc. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you so much for listening to the Clarinet podcast. For detailed show notes for this and all other episodes of the podcast, please head to www.clarinet.com. Did you know that Patreon backers now get access to exclusive content, extended versions of episodes presented in high-resolution audio, and much, much more? To learn more about how you can support the podcast and get access to this content at the same time, see www.clarinet.com/Patreon. If you enjoyed today's chat, be sure to tune in next time for a talk with Eugene Mondi of the National Symphony Orchestra in Washington, D.C. I'd like to thank Joel Jaffe for having the foresight to put these past couple interviews together with artists as they're actually in the studio there, or the workshop, I guess, or the factory in Vancouver. What a great idea, and I hope this is something we can continue into the future as artists pass through town. Today's episode was brought to you by our sponsor, D'Addario Woodwinds. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Sanding, shaping, balancing. For centuries, mastering your instrument meant mastering these crafts too. But now, D'Addario is refining craftsmanship for the 21st century by refining their reeds and mouthpieces with the world's most innovative techniques, so you can spend less time sanding, shaping, and balancing, and more time perfecting your own craft. To learn more about the new era of craftsmanship from D'Addario Woodwinds, visit D'Addario.com/woodwinds.